Well, it's that time of the year again, leading into Christmas, and this is quite often project bike time of year. This year we had the opportunity to once again get the project bike from Husqvarna Motorcycles Australia. And it's interesting, you know, on the enduro range anyway, you've got 7 models, you know, 3 2-strokes, 4 4-strokes, and now, you know, the question was like, geez, what do we choose? But I think, you know, what we did was a pretty obvious choice. Last year I had a FE350, you know, the mid-capacity 4-stroke, and because they've moved to a new generation of bikes for 2020 with Husqvarna, it made a lot of sense to actually get that same model upgraded for 2020. You know, sweeping upgrades to chassis, to suspension, to bodywork in particular, and to some refinements to the engine. So we thought it made total sense actually to compare back to back, and you know, from a living with the experience point of view, rather than just a straight up performance point of view, got a bit of an insight into you know, how the new generation bike, how new generation it actually is. Interesting, you know, 14,995, not the cheapest bike on the market by any stretch. Certainly quality componentry. Interesting that Husqvarna, even though they've stepped to a new generation bike this year, have also managed to keep the price exactly the same from last year. So, you know, I think probably a lot of journos in moto circles make the mistake of, or have a tendency, let's say, to use a bike as a clothes rack for product. You know, they'll just swing any aftermarket bit of bling that they can put on the bike that they can, just because they can. But I think, you know, there needs to be a little bit more methodology behind it than that. So yeah, we had a chat with the guys with Husqvarna. Obviously they push their Husqvarna accessories catalogue pretty hard, and we sort of said, hey, what's the average guy spend on a bike, you know, when he's just taken it out of the dealer and wants to put some accessories on it? You know, we sort of came to a mythical, well, like a hypothetical $1,500 mark. So we've basically given $1,500 to spend. So all the parts that we fitted to the bike were, the condition of us getting this bike from Husqvarna was that we put parts only on from Husqvarna accessories, which is okay in a lot of ways. I mean, there may be odd occasions where there's another aftermarket part that may be better, but you know, Husqvarna, obviously the benefit of working with their accessories, with the bike, they've got 6 months at least head start on everybody else with a new bike. So typically when the bike's released, you know, the accessories are ready to go, they fit well, you know, they work, they're pretty cost effective from a parts point of view. So let's give you a little bit of an insight into how we chose to spend our $1,500. And look, you know, starting up at the PHES, the progressive handlebar damping system, that's, what is that, $330 worth. It now was the first mod that I put on a bike. You know, there's nothing wrong with the existing clamps, they're the right sort of height, but I just like that fatigue that the elastomer PHES takes out of it, you know, over long rides. You still get the steering precision because the bottom clamp is, you know, hard clamped, not rubber, so it doesn't twist in a crash like rubber mounted clamps does. But the elastomers give you that option. A little bit fiddly, it's a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, and you do have to space out the, if you want to put it in the forward hole, you do have to space out the instruments a little bit to fit that, but you know, that's just a given for me, that thing. The next thing, I suppose if there's one complaint I had from the launch, the international launch in Finland this year, it was the seat. Too slippery, you know, it's lower, care of the new linkage this year, it's lower, it goes from about 10 mil lower than last year to about 20 mil lower at the back, care of the lowered linkage. I found a little bit low. Most guys around my height, around 6 foot, found it a little bit low. Designed obviously for extreme, so you know, you have control with the bike and you can step it a lot slimmer through the rear, etc. But the biggest thing for me was the seat was just slippery, and you know, by rights in sections where I was just bugging, I should have been standing, not sitting on the seat, but I was sitting and I was just sliding back on the thing. So we moved to a factory seat. Cool thing with this, as well as giving, it's gone back to that diamond pattern, which is actually pretty abrasive on your arse over a long time. Also these ribs for extra grip. Comes with some extra padding through there. So while it is the gripper itself is a little more abrasive on you, you get some more padding through the middle. It's a little bit flatter and it gives you a bit more room to move around the cockpits. Coupled with you know, the radiators and shrouds being down about 12 mil this year, just creates a lot more room and mobility through that part of the bike. So that's a great spend as well. And the seat is worth $290. So again, another part $300. The next thing I decided to put on was the rear brake discard, or the old shark fin. There's a couple of options, just the shark fin that mounts on the existing caliper, or one that actually comes with the billet caliper itself. I went for that because I think it's a lot stronger. Used it in the past, and when you look at the state of those things after you've been through ruts and, you know, with rocks in the bottom of them, you know, like, you realise that you probably save yourself a bent disc, which in itself is going to cost you a lot more money. That's not cheap, it's $350 or $345, so that's the discard and the caliper support. Yeah, the caliper support or the caliper carrier. Little annoying to put on, the 111mm on the entire bike. For some reason Brembo and Magura both do it. They have an 11mm, so to get the old caliper carrier off, you've got to take an 11mm off. So you go and buy an 11mm to do that a couple of years ago when they put that thing on. So Magura does that, but Once it's fitted, it's easy, offers great protection for your rear brake. And talking of a rear brake, that's the other thing I kind of always do. You never hear people saying, oh geez, I wish I had some more power for my rear brake. People are always looking for more feel and control from their rear brake, and generally you can get that by, by going to a solid disc. Yeah, no, you might argue it gets a little bit hotter, but generally I don't wear the bejesus out of my rear brakes, and in muddy conditions, you go through pads, a lot slower as well. So those sort of 4 components there, that adds up to, I think, give or take about 1,100 of our $1,500 budget straight away. Yeah, I could have probably thrown a pipe on it for that $1,000, but to my way of thinking, this pipe possibly taking the baffle out of the muffler at some stage. I think $1,000 on a pipe for the bikes that are this responsive and this good out of the box, and this level of tunability with mapping and traction control. I'm not sure the pipe is the first thing you spend. It's certainly not the first $1,500 I would spend. From there, we've also done just some little protection things. So if you've ever put a rock through your cases or through your slave cylinder before and been out in the middle of the boonies, and I've done that, maybe you're paranoid, but putting a case saver on there just to save that is a good thing. The Husky Park comes also with one of these upper chain guides or sliders as well. It's just a little bit different the way it sort of sits over the chain. So that's actually pretty cheap. $40 to me, no brainer, easy protection. A little bit of blue bling down there with the Husky logo on there as well. Also on the protection side of it, another $40 with the linkage. It's just a little plastic knuckle, a little guard that sits over there, screws in from the back. So pretty easy to fit. You do have to drop the linkage out of the thing. I was wishing you could actually just snap and screw it on. It's a 10-minute job to sort of get the thing in there. But again, just where the vulnerable bit of your linkage rods, etc., under there are exposed, and we're doing a little bit of rocks and hitting logs and stuff today. Definitely worth doing. The other thing, and not everybody's favourite, but I like it, rim tape protection. Also looks pretty cool on the rims. If you're a little bit ham-fisted with levers and you're changing tyres, it's pretty easy to scratch up the black rim. So as much as it's a little bit of bling, it's also a little bit functional as well. So that costs you $60 for some rim tape. Then, as you probably see with the stickers on the bike, we've got the guys from MotorX have hooked us up with a four-stroke startup kit. That's $150. So it comes with everything from obviously oil, chain lube, and a whole bunch of bike care products. So that was definitely something we wanted to do as well. Then there was a couple of little things. What else do we do? Valve cap set. Again, a little bit of bling for each of the Schrader valves. The practical addition or value of those is that they double as a valve tool as well, which is kind of nice. So if you haven't got one in your bum bag, that's kind of handy. Also, they cover a little bit more thread. Just a brake safety wire on for $20, easy. And the other thing, we radiator protection sleeves. So basically it's like fly screen that sits over your radiator louvers. Again, pretty easy to slot on, a little bit more fiddly to get your bolts back in to hold the shrouds and hold the things in place. But just, it saves you time when you haven't got all that, all that grass seed and bits and pieces and having to take your louvers off and then flush the things out. So again, just making things a little bit easier. So they're $107, which to me sounds like a lot for a couple of pockets of fly screen, I guess, but I guess it's factory fly screen. So there's our $1,500. I think from here we're probably going to look to, add some quality, Dunlop rubber to the things. We've got the FIM tyres on here at the moment. Also a little bit of work on the suspension because they've done some pretty big changes this year with the frame. They've made the frame torsionally stiffer, coupled that with softer spring rates in the fork, which have been offset by firmer damping. So it's a different sort of, I guess, a different philosophy in terms of the way the bike rides in a fairly similar way, but want to muck around with that a little bit and just sort of when I put some more hours on the bike, talk to a couple of suspension tuners out there, some of the new WP authorised dealers, see what they're doing and things, see if we can improve that a little bit. But pretty happy with it. Only been for a couple of rides on it at the moment, and as I found over in Finland in the sand, with a slightly raked out fork, care of the linkage, it's a really, I think, a better balance, more stable chassis, and definitely better and smoother to tip in on those sort of sandy tracks. So they're all the good things. Look, I'll probably be remiss of us not to talk about a couple of the issues. There have been a couple of issues with the Magura slave cylinder, an assembly problem with the seal. So. And people, basically, you lose your clutch. A lot of the smarter dealers, right back from 2017, have been actually fixing that before their customers even get the things. There have been a few instances, I know, through 18 and 19, less so now. So I think that sounds like that's pretty much a problem in the past. Also with the Magura front brake, I believe again a sealing issue, so a little bit of air gets in the line and you have a bit of brake fade, you get a spongy lever. Again, problem people talked about in 17, 18, not so much now. So it looks like they're pretty much on top of that. And the last thing, you know, there's I don't know. Sometimes you can take a few pictures on social media and blow them out of proportion, but you know, there have been a few breakages with the new subframe. So interestingly, this year for these things, they've actually engineered some flex into it, so it's an additional flexing member to assist the shocks action. You know, according to factory over in Austria, they reckon there was an inferior batch of the polyamide, I think it's called. Anyway, the plastic combination plastic carbon fibre plastic subframe, and some of them have been breaking. You know, most notably around this sort of this lower mount here. But you know, it's chose the 350 one because we had it last year, two because it's such a fun little bike. You know, it's got the best of both worlds. It's got that combination of fun factor of you know, the smaller bore things you can rev and have a bore with, but you don't have to tap dance on the gear lever the whole time because it's got the torque. Not so much over 450, but it's closer to those torque settings of 450. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the thing. Keep it on the website. We're going to have a bunch of stories, you know, with this bike and some other bikes we've got going throughout the course of the year.